Welcome back to 5 News Australia. This is Sofiána Rose, and today I do welcome you all from the Labor Party, Senator Julia, who'll be today talking to us about her 1993 sexual assault attack. So, Julia, it was quite a brave act for you to stand up after 20 years, correct me if I'm wrong, speaking out about your tragedy. So, what do you have to say about everything that's happened?
Well, the last 6 weeks or so in Australia, we've seen so many brave young women come forward and talk about the real need for change, about the fact that sexual assault, which is a really serious, awful crime, is actually quite prevalent and very, very rarely prosecuted.
Yeah.
And people are getting away with it. They're not being brought to justice. So I decided to speak out because, unlike most victims, I went to the police and it went to trial and he was still acquitted. But I wanted people to know, young women especially, that you still can achieve things in your life. Like, I've gone on to have be a member of Parliament, 2 master's degrees. I had quite an important job before going into Parliament. You can still go on with your life after something that awful has happened, even though you just want to crawl up in a ball and just cry forever. And also to show that some things have changed, but not enough has, even in an entire generation. Like, it's very, very frustrating and makes you really angry. I was angry enough that I spent 3 years trying to bring someone to justice and it didn't happen. But I'm also really angry that this is still happening and young women are still enduring this. And it's not just women. Sometimes it happens to men. It happens to kids.
Yeah.
It's just awful. And we need to make some changes to make sure it happens less often. It's more common for it to be prosecuted. But I'm also hoping we can bring about a change in men, because they're the ones actually committing these grotesque crimes.
Absolutely,
only a small number of men, but they are absolutely devastating, and they're happening to a lot of people.
So all this time you were quiet. So did you choose to be silent, or were you silenced?
Well, no, I spent 3 years going through the legal process and going to court. I didn't mention it much before in Parliament because the Attorney General has committed to reviewing the laws around sexual assault, and after a case a few years ago where it was overturned on appeal, someone went to jail, but their conviction was overturned on appeal because they said they didn't realise the woman wasn't consenting. And this is a situation where a young woman who was a virgin, his parents owned a nightclub. He invited her back to what he said was the VIP room.
Yeah.
He actually took her out the back to the back laneway and only raped her, and claimed that he didn't realise she wasn't consenting, even though he lied to her about where he was taking her.
Yeah.
And, it's the most unromantic scenario of all, but he seemed to think that she was somehow consenting to that. So there's a review happening about that particular get out of jail free card. And I'd been talking to the Attorney General off and on from time to time about where that process is up to. There was a consultation done a while ago by the New South Wales Law Reform Commission. So it wasn't that I was being silent, but things were happening behind the scenes. But what we've really seen in the last 6 weeks is just, it's phenomenal, and I hope that there is a real impetus for change.
It's traumatic. I definitely agree. I would not. I really do apologise. I would not know how I can relate to you in this situation, but it's definitely relatable for the other women out there who because in today's society we confuse rape and sexual assault, and we don't know the difference. And because I have heard and have seen on social media as well the way the police question young women, make them feel like they are at fault. Was that the case for you as well?
Yeah, look, it's very tricky. The police need to establish the scenario where this happened. They need to establish basically how the assailant chose the victim.
Yeah.
And so if that person is alone or if they're drunk or something like that, they're probably more likely to be targeted.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they're in any way responsible for what happens to them.
Yeah,
You're only
definitely.
responsible for your own actions, not other people's actions towards you.
Yeah.
But yeah, the way the police ask that question, sometimes it does feel like they're trying to blame you for what happened. And I think in the past sometimes they have, but I really hope that these days there's just absolute clarity about, no matter whether a woman, whether they're a nun or a prostitute or just a normal person somewhere in between the two of those, there's nothing they do that invites somebody to rape them.
Definitely. And how has that affected you in any way in terms with your motherhood?
I don't have kids, but no, that wasn't a decision. It didn't have anything to do with that. I mean, I'm married and we tried to have kids and it didn't happen. But no, that wasn't really an issue in that at all.
No, okay. Well, I've heard that you've also had a $6,000 compensation payout. Did that change anything at all, the way you felt? At all?
It did make me feel better in some respects because it's assessed at a balance of probabilities level. It was only available if a matter progressed to trial, and there's got to be a fair deal of evidence for something to go to a criminal trial.
Yeah.
But yeah, having that sort of assessed on the weight of probabilities and looking at all the medical evidence, that did help. I mean, the solicitor at the time thought I should be appealing for more money because it probably didn't even cover some costs, but I wasn't really interested in money. I was just happy that...
You needed justice at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was, pleased that I was being believed, but yeah, I wasn't really worried about money. I certainly didn't want to go back to court fighting over money.
Yeah, of course, definitely. That would have been a long journey as well to do that nowadays.
Yeah, it's already 3 years.
Yeah. And has that affected your surroundings and your environment after speaking out?
You mean now or back then?
Back then.
Look, back then it was a hard few years. I ran into the guy who sexually assaulted me at uni regularly. It affected my studies. I didn't do nearly as well as I had in previous years. And I couldn't wait to graduate and get out of there. And yeah, it made me very nervous about going to places where I hadn't been before or not knowing.
Is that still the case today?
No. But certainly back then, I was very nervous about going to places alone, going to unfamiliar places, that sort of thing for a long time.
So now, reflecting back from what's happened, what would have you tell yourself back then that you know now?
I wouldn't do anything differently. I'd probably, well, the only different thing I would have done is, so the assault took place sort of between two police stations, and I went to the police station where I didn't know the police because I was embarrassed to talk in front of the police I knew because they were all men.
Yeah.
I think I probably would have actually, felt more supported if I'd gone to the police station where I knew all the police. But I was just really embarrassed because I knew them. I wanted to talk to a female police officer, so I went to a different station.
Yeah. And did they help you at all?
Yeah, but it took a very long time. And, I don't think they were very enthusiastic about it. I had to hassle them a lot. I had to get solicitors to write to them to ask them where the investigation was up to actually get them to even question the guy, even though I told them where he lived.
So, knowing all of this, we're going back to you going back when you were at uni at that time. Did your professors at that moment give you any support? Did they care, or like was there any like support system set in place for you at uni back then?
They weren't really formal ones. I applied for special consideration at the end of the academic year, but back then, I got quite high marks, and special consideration was only on a pass-fail basis.
Yeah.
So if you went from getting credits or distinctions to getting 60%, nothing happened, even though quite clearly your marks had been really affected by what had happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were quite sympathetic and supportive.
And what about your friends and family?
Oh, very supportive.
Very
Very supportive.
And so when you reached out to the police and, obviously to your family, letting them know, and your friends, how was it speaking to your family and friends about this back then? How did they react?
They were really upset. They weren't upset with me, but they were really upset that it had happened.
Yeah.
They were really sympathetic. Some of them had been through similar things.
Yeah.
Though no one I know had actually gone to the police about that.
So has anyone in your family experienced something similar like this but could not raise their voice?
Not in my family, but in my circle of friends, yeah.
Yeah. And do you still have in contact with them today?
Yeah.
And what do they have to say now after you being public about this?
They were really proud of me, and they hope that it contributes to this process of trying to bring about some change.
So after reflecting everything that's happened to you, especially with this tragedy, what change do you want to implement in the Parliament House for this?
I think, there's a few things. Firstly, I think we need better education in schools, particularly for boys. Boys need to know the consequences of their actions. They need to see girls more as, especially if they go to a single-sex school, they need to see girls more than something that they can conquer on the weekend and go and boast about on Monday morning.
Yeah.
That they're friends, and if they have a sexual relationship with a girl, it should be a part of a relationship. It just shouldn't just be, a conquest, whether or not she's interested or not, and ignoring her protests. That they need to know that it can really ruin someone's life and make them miserable for years.
Yeah.
If you take somebody's autonomy over their own body away from them. It's an awful thing to do, and I don't think they're really aware of how bad that can be.
So have you appealed anything in the Parliament House as yet through Department of Education about their educational values?
I haven't, but there is a very big petition out there at the moment.
Yeah.
38,000 mainly school students have signed it, and with another 5,000 students, mainly girls, have written their accounts of how they were sexually harassed or sexually assaulted by other kids. And I think people are really starting to just pay attention to just the volume of people calling for this. So I think that's really important in terms of a prevention thing.
Yeah.
I actually think that, by the time men are adults, they're not boys anymore, that they are aware of these consequences, and they've got to stop just telling themselves that somehow, a woman's clothes or her actions or her behaviour justifies them assaulting her.
Exactly.
It
Women
just
shouldn't be
doesn't.
sexualised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But nothing justifies being assaulted.
Yeah.
And I think, men need to take that responsibility. I think it'd be nice if men also, when their friends use language that sort of justifies this behaviour, even though they're just words, I think they need to pull them up on it and say, that's not right. that's not the way things.
Do you feel that social media plays, a vital role in this?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is also a lot of abuse that happens on social media, and seeing that, seeing the way the abuse that's hurled at prominent women on social media, I think reinforces really ridiculous ideas that some men have about their behaviour being justified.
Yeah.
And we're only talking about a small number of men, but if the language is prevalent that justifies their behaviour to themselves, then then they're not getting those triggers to change their behaviour.
It's a global issue, and talking about this for many women from a lot of explicit cultural backgrounds, they find this a taboo.
Yeah.
So do you have any strategies for those women out there who are experiencing this? What can they do? Do you have any words of encouragement or?
Yeah, well, I would certainly encourage them, if they've been through anything like this, to talk to their family and friends, or there are plenty of counsellors out there who will talk to you and support you anonymously. You should feel that you can go to the police. I know also a lot of women come from countries where the police can't be trusted, and the police will take the side of rapists. Sometimes for sort of class-based reasons, because the woman is poor and the men are wealthy. Other times just because that's the way they are. Some cultures, he's expected to make an honest woman of her by marrying her, and that's just like the worst thing that could happen to anyone. He's being forced into a marriage to someone who raped you. Yeah. So, it's very tricky, and it's hard in some other cultures, but I think people, need to know right and wrong, and that there are people there you can talk to, even if it is quite daunting.
Thank you so much, Julie. It was lovely to have you in, and we'll be right back. Thank you.